This conference will now be recorded.
Good. Well, it's nice to see everybody. So I did not do a very lengthy agenda because I felt that the budget and that discussion should take as much time as we have. Mindy has a couple of things that relate to the electric department first that I'd like to have her discuss because we need to make, it's basically a policy change in how we're dealing with our accounts that are not current. And I'll let Mindy carry the discussion on that, but it's getting tough.
So I contacted NIPA a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, to see when we can start doing disconnects again, because we were told that we couldn't. NIPA wasn't aware of that. They said, as far as we're concerned, you can disconnect, you should be able to disconnect. Due to the nature of the economy, obviously, we weren't gonna in the beginning anyway. So we had planned to start doing disconnects this coming month. And then the governor signed on the 17th of June, this law that states you cannot disconnect or terminate any service for a residential customer for non-payment during this state of emergency and then for 180 days after the state of emergency ends.
Well, it's a full year at least.
So that puts us to shut offs next year.
Except for the commercials.
Yes, commercials we can still do, and we are gonna start doing those. We've got 53-ish accounts that are in arrears for businesses.
Leave that open, Jason.
And the last total that I pulled is $45,000.
No, you just keep closing the door. Let's get this thing out.
Some of them are current ones that are only like a month past due, because we haven't been out to see them. $75,000. Residential is substantially higher. We're $141,000 in past dues right now.
What about water and sewer? So they can also not pay.
They can, but we re-levy them.
Yeah.
So that's up to them not to pay their taxes
There you go.
in essence. So we get paid for that regardless. So going forward, because we have a hard time catching people up, we changed the disconnect notices because you can't apply for HEAP, and they are going to do a third round of HEAP without a disconnect notice. So we're sending them out, and it states on there that you have to pay by the disconnect date, but we're not giving a date. We're going to leave that blank, and then also we're going to add to the disconnect notice, payment arrangements are available upon request. Just contact the billing office. Once we can start shut off again, we're gonna.
Worst time of year.
Hmm? Oh, I know.
But you can't in the winter anyhow, so.
No, you can't.
push it back. Back to life.
So we have essentially 7 months where we can shut off. We used to charge 20% of whatever their arrears were, which is just 20% of a lesser number. So they never ever actually paid off. So our tariff allows this, and I did discuss it with NIPA. We're gonna have current plus 1/7 of your arrears. So by the time October or November essentially hits, when we can't shut off again, they will be caught up. They don't have a choice.
Talk about next year now.
Yes, next year. And then because the businesses are so far behind, I mean, some of them have really hefty bills. We're gonna go back to April's amount to stay turned on. NIPA has said we can lessen the restrictions, we just can't make them worse.
But it says.
So normally you have to pay your full balance in order to remain on. We're stating that you're gonna have to pay your full April balance to remain on, and then we will work with them for the rest of the arrears and keep them current. So at least we are cutting them some slack, but we are trying to get them cut up in the same time frame. But there
I'm talking
are,
about the commercials now.
correct.
I wouldn't give them any slack.
Well, I know some of them have been shut down. Not all of them, and some of the bigger balances are from people who have been open throughout. So they're just chronic non-payers. And a lot of the residential people that aren't paying are chronic non-payers.
Same names every year.
So that's kind of where we're at right now, but 100% open to thoughts because this is brand new. We didn't even know we could modify our payment arrangements until I had a conversation with my.
This isn't just NICA customers, it's NICEAG customers.
All-
Yes, this is all
State of New York.
utilities,
in Europe.
State of New York.
water, sewer, electric, and telecommunications.
And be grateful we're not National Grid or NICEAG.
Yeah, because those bills are a lot
There's a lot
bigger.
bigger impact, but the governor signed the most recent order. It started through the legislature March 23rd, and it was signed by the governor June 17th. So it's what we have to do, and trying to figure out how to deal with the residentials who would normally, we would have cut off April 15th. But obviously, and I would argue that I don't think we would have been able to cut them off in April without this legislation. I mean, we knew it was going through the legislature, but we didn't know anything else. And it also applies to water and telecom.
Mhm.
Nice, I've already said this, I got distracted with the text for Peter, but as far as the residentials go, can you send out what I call a bluff for those that can?
We send out disconnect notices every month.
Well, I don't mean a disconnect, I mean just send out, here's your balance, you can set up a payment schedule, not say you're gonna disconnect. But
Well-
some of them might just be so in the mindset that can I pay it,
Mhm.
that they might just send a payment.
So the disconnect notices that we're gonna send will have a payment arrangement option listed on them, which we've never done before.
But you can't send that to residential.
We can, there's no disconnect date on it.
Oh.
So, because for people who get heat, they have to have that little pink piece of paper to send to the county, otherwise the county won't give them heat money.
Okay.
So originally we thought, okay, well, maybe we can do a letter and send a letter out to the people we know have heat. But I think more people are gonna qualify for heat now than did before because of unemployment and whatever the case may be. And reading through the disconnect notice, nothing in there is, it's not a mean, it's not a mean way of putting it across. It's just stating that at this point in time, your gas is past due. If you don't pay by the disconnect date, you will be shut off, but we're not listing a disconnect date. That way they have the notification for heat, but
Sure.
they know we're not gonna shut them down.
Well, if they have a problem, you call in, they're really destitute, you know, you can tell
Mhm.
them straight scoop. If
Right.
they're not destitute, they're getting more money from unemployment than they've ever gotten in their lives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and, you had mentioned, and maybe I missed it, you said 140 for 141,000 past due. What is the breakdown between commercial and residential, like numbers wise?
Well, it's 141,000 in residential.
Oh,
It's,
residential.
yes, and it's 45,000 in commercial.
And how many accounts would you think approximately that?
There's
141
a
can make?
total of 242 accounts past due.
Residential.
No, 53 of those are residential, so, or 53 of those, I'm sorry, are commercial. So about 189.
Still a big number. So
And some of these people we're not gonna collect from because businesses have shut down and they've left. So they're gonna end up going write-offs. Sharon has a list of all those people that have.
You say write-off subsidized by the taxpayer.
no, they're subsidized by the ratepayer
Yeah,
That's what I
in
mean.
this case, yeah.
Slight difference.
Slight
We're
difference.
really one and the same, but.
mhm.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's where we're at. No, we'll work with it and see what happens. But my guess is that when people start seeing their accumulated bills, and I mean, a lot of them realize that they've got to make some arrangements, or otherwise they're going to reach a point where they can't pay for it. Ultimately, when there might be a turnoff.
Mhm.
So We'll do everything we can in that sense, but the real policy change here is to go from paying 20% of a balance that just never pays out to factoring in the number of months and saying, okay, you've got 7 months to, we'll divide this by 7. And you'll get this piece of your bill each month until it's paid.
Some of these people won't pay until next April 15th.
Oh, I know.
That's
This is going to be a hefty
going to be a more serious
Yeah.
issue. That's why we want to start moving on this now so that we, the people that will pay, that we don't let them slide into reverse too far.
It's just have to be made clear that this is not forgiveness, will not be forgiveness.
There is no forgiveness
There is
with
no
electors.
forgiveness.
I mean, ultimately, they have to file bankruptcy.
Mhm.
And you're also charging interest.
Yeah.
Can't charge interest.
Not at the moment.
No interest, no
I
penalty.
know, I just think that would seem a little insensitive, although we are in a pandemic and many perceive that the unemployment is like people are getting wealthy off unemployment. They're not really.
All my chambermaids are trusted. They're making more money than ever made their entire life.
Oh, I
Everybody I
was
talk to is
like, I
saying
want to
the
go back
same
to work.
Well, we can have a philosophical debate.
Oh, I'm just talking people that I talked to. They're making more money than ever made in their lives. Almost everyone I talked to said the same thing.
I don't,
Well, and I
you really mingle with a lot of lower socioeconomic,
Who cares what you say? Those are my people.
well, they're your people. Right.
They are. They're who I live
We'll
with.
talk about it later, but I just don't. I would highly
People use
disagree.
those people.
Yeah, they're my people. They're not your people.
I guess my theory behind it is whether or not we charge interest and penalties. If you were caught in this pandemic and you are down and out and don't have as much money as you had before, there's no reason you can't call and say, can I make a payment arrangement with you so that I can pay my bill?
You mean there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to encourage that conversation? I agree
Encourage
100%.
it, but I know personally, if I lost my job, I would call every company or every
Well, you're
desk,
responsible.
Mhm.
yeah, and say, listen, I lost my job. Is there a way that I can set up a payment arrangement with you so that I don't go into default and you don't shut my lines off or you don't whatever?
But also you're looking at it through a lens where you're the village treasurer and you make a decent amount of money and your husband works for the village, where there's other people who have multiple children and then maybe are preoccupied with keeping the roof over their head and keeping the children. So I'm just
Still have a
saying,
child, still have to stay home with my child. And
what's that?
I still have to stay home with my kid and homeschool and
Okay.
Anyway, can we communicate that payments are
absolutely.
available? We'll make the initiative.
It states right in our tariff. And we are going to put it on the disconnect notice that if you'd like to speak about payment arrangements, you can contact us, but I have no problem sending out a letter to anybody that's on this list or every single customer we have that says if you are having hardship and need to look into payment arrangements, we can do that because it does specifically state we have to offer it.
We provide an example of what would
I
a
wouldn't
payment
promote it.
arrangement would look
I wouldn't
like.
advertise the fact that they don't have to pay until next April 15th.
Well, the fact that this is recording, people will watch it, probably hear it, so
It's a state law.
Yeah.
Yeah, but who knows about it unless we tell
people watch this video.
Well, I'm of the opinion that we're probably better off to try to work with our customers now and
I agree 100%.
and do what we can. Believe me, there are consumer protection agencies out there that are going to be watching for this stuff, and I'm sure are already doing so, but this does prohibit some things, such as, it says the municipality shall provide such residential customers with the right to enter into or restructure or restructure a deferred payment agreement without the requirement of down payment, late fees, or penalties as such is provided for in this article. So, again, I think we all understand the motivation here, which is to try to help people get through this stuff. But, yeah, there's always an element that we have to deal with that are the chronic ones that
That's every wall.
will take advantage of it.
Mhm.
But ultimately, the longer they defer making people that should have paid in April, I mean, it's amazing how many people come in when they get the turnout. So ultimately, when this is over with, they're going to be in a situation where they're going to be in, if they let it go for an entire, almost 2 years,
big chunk of cash.
they'll have some serious cash needs that they're not going to be able to meet. But again, my gut tells me that they're going to require us to work on the payment arrangement. of some sort.
And if we can provide like an example of what that would look like, so maybe they can, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a uniform one fits all, but so maybe that as they say a payment plan, they can look at their own particular bills and see what the monthly or the payment plan would look like. So they can do some of their own.
Well, certainly the basic program would be 7 months, but it may have to be different down the road. We're not going to know that until we cross that bridge, I guess.
Well, I'm just
Well,
saying.
yeah, our initial probably won't be the 7 months because these balances are going to be extremely high. And I don't think somebody just going back to work is going to be able to afford that high of a payment. So we may have to stretch that out over throughout the winter as well. But there again, if they don't pay the following winter because they're chronic non-payers, we're going to be in the same boat the following year.
And this is when you sent out that email previously, and that's the fear, and that's what I was talking about, is seems to be the fallout that local municipalities are going to have to deal with this pandemic, that oftentimes people don't, when you just want to survive it at first,
Right.
but now the economics of getting back to square one is going to be extremely difficult.
It's gonna be difficult. Keep in mind that not all municipalities have electric departments to deal with.
Some don't even have water and sewer.
That's true.
And I may reach out to a few of the other full requirements and see what they're doing, because I know Messina is in the same boat we are.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of residential customers.
Usually we're dealing with a lot more unemployment than we were.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's what they're- So that's, that shift in policy will resolution on the, what's going on.
So with that being said, how is that impacting the 141K past due? It's hard to really generate an estimate of what we're going to recoup, but how does that impact the budget? Have we accommodated that, Mayor, as far as that, I wouldn't say lost revenue, but revenue in question?
Deferred revenue.
I've actually,
Somewhat.
the revenue that is stated in the budget for the upcoming year, I took our current revenue figures. We're well over our revenue number that was budgeted last year. So all I did was tweak it slightly. I did tweak it up slightly. I could bring it back down because I have a feeling our budget payment is going to change. And the only reason I increased it is because right now we're making a $345,000 budget payment to NIPA.
That's difficult.
However, as that credit builds, we will reduce that payment.
Okay.
So, and with the current situation that we're in, they are discussing with their legal department what our options are as well.
Okay.
So the number that I budgeted thus far is below what we're currently at.
Okay.
for revenue.
Because I just, as far as our commitment to NIPA, if we can only collect so much,
Oh, yeah.
is NIPA going to provide us that?
No, they are well aware. And
I've been encouraging Kimball to realize that, well, the department has been able to pay for everything that is access to cash may be curtailed. It really, we can go up and down in terms of what we sell for power. That's a revenue piece, but that revenue doesn't translate directly to budget. What we have to do is we first have to pay for the power. So really when we're budgeting the operations, we're looking at the net difference between what we charge for the power and what we pay for it. And that's what we really run the department on. So
I just think the fixed demand charge is going to be a lot less this coming year.
well, you're for a position to know that.
depends on when they reset.
Yeah, totally. Rate study. Any idea?
Had a conversation with John Payne and Daryl Jacobs with regards to the rate study. I have preliminary rate increase numbers. I'm not happy with the preliminary rate increase numbers because they are not going to put us even at where we currently are once they change our PPA. So, and as it stands right now, NIPA is not doing any rate increases. Everything is at a standstill until this whole situation is over. There are 2 rate studies ahead of us that are in dire need of increases. that will be completed before ours. John did tell me that, but he's only looking at between a 3 and 5% increase, and we're gonna lose that, more than that in the PPAC recalc. So my plan is, once we start conversations again with regard to the rate study, he knows I'm not happy with it. I was very vocal about the fact that it was not going to generate us any additional income and we were gonna lose income. So he's gonna go back and relook at it. Because, and his main factoring was, yes, we picked up $2.4 million worth of debt, but we did it at 2%. And he's not seen a bond rate that low. So his theory was our payments aren't gonna be high enough to substantiate that much more of an increase.
What's Bill Fairtech say about all this?
Bill thinks it should be higher because of what they're gonna do with the PPA.
I mean, are they going out 5 years, 10 years? You know, estimating costs.
We had to factor a 3-year capital plan with them.
What about payroll and health insurance and all?
That was all factored in at an estimated 2% increase per year.
Health insurance?
Health insurance, I think we did at 6 or 6.5. But they took all those factors and they took our last 2 years worth of NIPA reports and they plugged them into a matrix that kind of spits out where all the increases have come throughout the year, and that factors in the overall rate increases for those. And then they take our capital plan and use that for the main chunk of our rate increase.
So just for me to, there's no, we're third in line behind a rate study, in a rate study sort of order that's been on pause.
Yeah. At least until they get back in their office. Well, the NIPA's intent is to be back in their offices by September. I know that's not,
Rate time for the second.
yeah,
Not that on stone, but
no.
it's a good goal.
But at that point, John's still working, but now they're working on other items because of our current situation.
So we'll continue to keep you posted on where we stand on that. And again, you know, I think it just, I think we will continue to sell power. Our businesses are reopening. Hopefully, you know, the damage from all of this virus experience will level off and we'll get back into some routine.
After there's a.
Okay. Anything else that you needed to do on that?
No, I don't think so.
If not, then why don't we devote our energy to the budget, recognizing that until the public hearing is conducted on June 29th, we're not in a position to make any changes. However, we can work on the budget. So, and those items that we would work on with the, my hope is that June 29th, we have the public hearing, we call a special meeting to adopt the budget. There's a couple other issues that I need to get on that agenda that are critical. One of them is called fireworks.
Yes.
The application hasn't, as of yesterday, had not gone around for signatures because nobody had given anybody a signal that they should. I checked with Roost. They're still planning on fireworks for July 4th. They only have one sponsor. I expect it will be a much more brief experience. But we're also, the state has indicated they will be issuing July 4th directives. So what can happen and what can't, we haven't seen those yet. Probably get them on the 3rd of July. So what I may do, just in anticipation, because the board does have to approve, is try to get it on the agenda for the 29th, is the next earlier. Other than that, interesting, Saranac Lake Village just voted not to have fireworks this year. Tucker Lake is having them. So communities are making their decisions independently. I don't know why, if you're voting not to have them, I guess I can understand why you go ahead and say no, because the state directives, when they do come out, will be no issue. But anyway, that's where we're at the moment. We're still sort of planning on it. No parade. So the 4th is going to be a very different day here at Lake Placid.
Could be you with a Roman candle.
We can't because we banned those, remember?
It's interesting, the other night I was sitting in my living room
It's been a lot funner around there.
later in the evening, and I had, all of a sudden, there was a flash of light that lit up the inside of my house. And what the heck? So I looked out and I saw a car going down Wilmington Road, and I saw this fountain of fire on the side of the highway across the road from me. And then I realized what was happening. The tenants over there had some kind of incendiary device, and they were lighting them off on the edge of the road. So I called the PD department. I just said, you probably ought to check this out because I think they're breaking the state law by, these are not sparklers. These had about a 12-foot high fountain of fire. I got a picture of it. It was
Literally across the street from you.
Yeah.
Seems like the least ideal place.
Well,
I do it right near the gas station.
We live in a neighborhood where at least three times a week, we see that big Arco tanker pull up and refuel. And I got to tell you, when you've got 10,000 gallons of gasoline, you kind of watch. And it amazes me because more often than not, he backs out into the highway when it's time to leave. I can tell you that does make me a little bit nervous. But I'm just hoping that the double walls on those tanks are good enough to keep the car from penetrating.
Might give you a chance to run.
Yeah. I buried myself in the bathroom in the back end of the building. Okay, budget. When we last met, and what you have, I believe what you have in front of you is before any further money. A couple of things that happened.
They have an updated tax cap.
They do have. Do I have it?
I don't know, there you go.
Have a copy of that. I got another. You have one with you? No. Okay.
Why don't you have one, 4 or 5 copies? So we took there was a new fire truck scheduled. After some discussion, we removed that from this current year, the department. And the volunteer, there was discussion at both levels, decided felt that they could live without that for this year. Interestingly enough, that's a budget neutral item because the revenue comes out of a reserve account. So it doesn't matter to the net effect is it brought the total numbers down on the budget, but it doesn't change the revenue piece. So I just want to see what Mindy's got. And a couple of other things that I've asked Jason and Justin to consider. By maneuvering the fire budget this year a little bit, I believe we could get the cost of the roof work that they need done, which is $37,000. I think we can get that out of this year's budget.
Yeah.
When is that work supposed to start?
Well, they had it factored in for next year event, but I'm suggesting to them to go ahead and get it committed before the end of July. Even if they don't get the budget done, we can encumber. And then the nice thing is that the new software will hopefully be operating as of the beginning of the new year, so we'll actually be able to do the encumbrance correctly.
Yeah.
Which one is July 1st?
Yeah.
Yes.
So as you look at the proposed budget, at this point, the numbers are down $400,000 in revenue, which is really just the effect of the fire truck. Expenditures are down $400,000. Left the fund balance, to the extent that we're relying on funding from fund balance, we left it the same. And that basically has the effect of bringing down, well, it doesn't have any effect on the tax rate yet. The things that would have effects would be, as I said, would be something like the firehouse roof, which we felt we could get out and get done this year, as opposed to leaving it in this budget. So what I was trying to do here was to see if I could get rid of the, if you look where it says final proposed budget over on the right, there's $77,000 there. So I was looking for numbers in the budget that would, that we could trim out, that would have the effect of leaving the tax rate just about the same as it was for the current year. The increase in, there is an increase in assessed valuation, which as of the tentative numbers that we're using, was about 9.3 million. So that's giving us some of the money that we need to offset increased costs in the budget. In
Well,
most
not in
cases.
actuality, just in the form of the tax rate,
Mhm.
not in dollars and cents.
Yeah, no, I agree. But as far as rate goes, what people were paying last year, I was trying to bring it to at least that level.
Yeah.
If we can do better, we're trimming down. Keep in mind that what we're doing, unless we adjust the fund balance for us, we're trimming down the 2% allocation.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the tax rate is always a silly argument. I mean, Saranac Lake, I looked it up, is paying $12.61.
In the
You know,
village.
in the village, yeah. And because their assessments are half of what our assessments are for the
That's right.
same, for the same building.
Lower property values is what causes
So
that.
it's-
Thank God we're not in Saranac Lake.
The whole argument is silly.
But on the other hand, you know, the average median home here is what, 315,000, I think that's what I read in something Emily wrote. The average median home, I would guess, in Saranac Lake is probably 100,
It's, or at least half of that.
at least half.
So I mean, that, my whole, the tax rate is, I always thought it was silly, but that's just me.
No, but you know, when you look at your assessment rate and you look at the tax rate is what creates the cost.
Yeah. If I look at the dollar bill, how much did I pay last year, how much am I paying this year? But I'm pretty sure that's what most people look at.
If you were to look at it that way, in fact, we'd be looking at about a 3-cent difference right now, and by adjusting out the firehouse fees, it probably brings it down to 1.5 cents. If there's other items in the budget that you all are looking at, let's get a discussion on those topics, because they could be factored in as well.
Well, I think we should do that. And like I said to you before, Craig, I'd really like to keep us revenue neutral and not do the 2% increase this year because of the COVID. You know, and take more out of fund balance. Because every year our fund balance goes up. I don't think it's going to go up
It's
much
not
this
going to go up
year.
this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, 2 years ago, $1.2 million. Last year, 787 increase in fund balance. Even
Well,
if we recover it, we're
But
50/50.
keep in mind, we're drawing down on that fund balance at the same time. I mean,
Yeah.
we're healthy right at the moment. If the village wants to go ahead with a parking garage, my thinking would be, and I probably won't be here when that decision is made, but my thinking would be that gives us the ability to pay for some of that rather than leverage.
Exactly. That's why, even though we were over budgeting all these years, I never had a problem with it because I knew how much this was going to cost. We can be part of it, fund balance. But, you know, this COVID year, a lot of people are struggling. I think it would send a good message to at least be revenue neutral. And then we can still make adjustments along with the budget as well, if we see something.
How much do we have to draw down from the approximately?
Well, it's $76,000.
No, 76 would just keep the tax rate level.
Yeah. Right now, we're pulling,
Well, 2% of
2% on $3.8 million is more like $700,000. Good luck.
No, 2% increase in our,
No, wait a minute.
no, it's
I'm
more like 70,
You take it on your tax levy last year.
Yes.
I don't have the.
$76,000.
the sheet that we-
$76,000. $76,000. That's the. It's
yeah,
2%.
76,000 was what the increase was.
So the 76, was
So
that zero?
I'm proposing take the 76 and take
That's
it
the
on.
increase in the tax levy.
Yeah,
But if you don't do the 2%, as we've got it here, that is not going to bring that 2% to zero.
That's gonna be. I'm getting a 2 down. Well, the increase in the department requested or mayor recommended in real estate taxes is at 3.923351. And last year was 3.846423.
Yep.
Which is a $76,000 difference.
But keep in mind that, that's additional. And that's what I was trying to clear out. But what that would do in effect, well, actually, your tax rate would be lower because we've got a little over 9 million increased tax base.
yeah, it would be substantially lower if people care about that.
Not substantially, but a little lower. Yeah. But having said that, we need to identify those things that are potentially could be carved out.
Yeah, let's do that. That's my position. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but.
So that takes us through the expense categories.
Nobody's quite ready. I'd like to start with the police department with the police car that they're looking to get, $55,000, which is a Tahoe. I've been an advocate all along that they don't have to have all Tahoes. They didn't have them all when I was there, and I don't understand why they can't have at least one car. And I think that would be a substantial savings if we're doing a car, not a Tahoe.
Have you had any, you're a commissioner of that department, Scott. Have you had any discussion with the department? That would be helpful.
I've always advocated for smaller cars, because I think me, myself personally, if I drive around a big truck, I don't have to, I feel guilty. That's just me, because I'm wasting all this gas for no car reason. Sometimes you need a truck. As long as the sedan, it's four-wheel drive. It has to
Other
be
police
four-wheel drive.
agencies are able to do it. I don't know why our agency can't. We did it when I was there. We had 2 Tahoes and 2 cars. It would be the team to work. I don't know
Police
why.
does it,
With the possibility for
it's $20,000.
four-door
cheaper.
truck versus Tahoe, because the trucks are cheaper, substantially cheaper. But still four-wheel drive and could be used for transport of the barriers and stuff like during Ironman as an option.
Well, we already have a pickup truck, the cheapest driver. We can't use it for that.
So
I like Serenity Lake's cars. We could even spend a little extra money, but well, new job. I like the black. That might not be like Placid, but like $20 in dollar savings.
did they make a four-wheel drive cop car?
I don't know. I don't know if the Tauruses or the
They do their Chargers too,
Chargers.
as an option.
Or
If they're-
we're front wheel driving, we don't really have to car.
We have no
When you
problem.
diversify it, you use the Tahoe in the winter, not necessarily the cars. And then in the summer, you use the car. That's why it's nice to have 2 and 2, and it worked. My opinion, it worked.
But they weren't four-wheel drive. No. But they should be. I mean, the new ones.
You can
you
get them
get-
four-wheel
you can
drive,
get-
yeah, or all-wheel drive. I absolutely said that. I guess my point being, even if they're not, they still work for other agencies. They work for Saranac Lake, I don't know why they can't work for us.
I'd recommend that, the other piece that I've heard of this is that if this vehicle were purchased as a police vehicle to begin with, say, we're putting about $13,000 into the attachments that are added to the vehicle once it's received. I've been told that the state police buy these cars already equipped. I don't know what the difference is, why we wouldn't do the same.
Well, there's so many state police and the same requirements, that's probably the answer, isn't it, Scott? I mean, don't all state police cars get equipped the same,
I'm sure it's a uniform.
Ours pretty much do too, though.
But
but the same,
They'll have a computer, a printer, a cage. I don't know if they got a lockbox in the
because
trunk.
we get the car and then it ships someplace and they have all of the aftermarket pieces put on it. And the comment that has been suggested to me is that there's a savings just in purchasing it with that stuff already equipped and that they're available. I don't know. That's
It'd be
state
worth
con-
looking at state contract
That's
if you
state
can get it fully equipped.
There's a state contract at a la carte. You can get whatever you want on it or not on it. You want a bare bones, you can get a bare bones. You want the light bar on it, you can get a light bar. You might not, I don't know if you can buy, I guess you can probably buy it through them too, unless they're dedicated to a certain computer. I don't know what they're using.
So we have some discussion with the department. We can't do anything with this budget until until the 29th anyway. Can we have some discussion with the department on that and see if we can get some consensus? Does that make sense?
Sure.
So Craig, on the 29th, we're gonna have a public hearing, chances are nobody will show up. Are we gonna talk about budget immediately then after?
I'd like to get it done so we don't, I mean, we can actually, the latest that we can actually approve the budget, accept it and adopt it is July 1st.
Oh, so we have to do it that day.
Yeah. We've been up against these dates
Sure.
sometimes in the past. And there's another factor in here you need to be aware of, and that is that the assessment number that we've got, that we're working with is tentative until the 30th of June,
Mhm.
when all of the any grievances are reflected. I've heard nothing about grievances this year. I guess they were done virtually.
Yeah.
So we don't know. Right at the moment, we're looking, as I said, we're looking at about 9.3 million that increased the assessment rolls, but that's not the final number. Usually, in my experience, it's made minor
Changes.
change in the tax rate.
And what was the date?
This year, what's interesting is that we've actually, given the virus issues, we've actually written down some of the revenues that we ordinarily would be expecting. We have no way of knowing what our parking revenues are going to look like. I can tell you that probably for the months of April and May, it's probably $18,000
Mhm.
that
That's incidental.
traditionally we would receive. But I'm really concerned about the municipal lot this summer because without the hockey people here, and they traditionally pay to park in that lot, we're just going to have to, I think we're going to want to consider increasing our meter fees in there.
We couldn't do, curbside's a little high, but is that something? But what is it?
But
Well,
I
it's
think our
okay.
conversation was,
Just minutes.
Well, we initially were thinking about bringing it to curbside, but I think, I don't know if it was Mindy or someone else.
Well,
suggested
curbside
we go halfway.
well, curbside for hourly and then $10 for the day. Because right now we only charge $5 for the entire day. So at least then it's a little more than $1 an hour to park in there for 8 hours or more.
Oh, the
And
municipal
then,
lot.
yeah,
Oh,
and then if you're gonna go for an hour, you pay the curbside rate,
Which is $2.
$2.
and I think you should have a 24-hour rate too. If people do park there at night free, I mean, why not?
Except for in the winter time,
I mean.
but yeah, for the summer.
That's not unusual.
You know, parking's becoming a major factor in our budgets. We're looking, even now, even before this happened, we're looking at $500,000 a year between parking lots and curb.
And that's the only way that they can.
And I know the locals don't like the meters, but on the other hand, it helps keep their tax.
And that's what I explained to us, that this is the one way we can generate revenue,
And most,
manage parking and generate revenue based on tourism.
and most locals say they don't go on the main street anyway. So I mean, that's one way that our visitors are helping Fayetteville.
Well, if you didn't charge for curbside parking, what would happen when we stopped it? I mean, everybody that has an apartment or works just parked up the street, there's nowhere to go.
We stopped that last Monday. Right?
Mhm.
And by the way, we're back to parking where they usually do.
Well, of course.
But I do think, we didn't factor that in when we were doing this initial budget in the beginning. We were uncomfortable with even this summer in terms of what it might produce. But, I thought if the last 2 weekends are any indicator, I think we're going to have some traffic, just not the events.
Yeah, we've been busy.
Yeah, and I understand bookings are
Yeah, not bad.
perking
And
up.
longer stays, 4-night stays instead of 2.5, average.
Haven't seen that for 20, 30
Yeah,
years.
because the groups are gone. So take that out of the equation.
People working from the computers.
Are you saying busy in regards to,
Relative to what I feared.
yes, or as opposed to what has become the status quo, what we've grown accustomed
I mean,
to?
the past 2 weeks have been decent.
So, enough to fuel some optimism.
I mean, housekeepers.
No,
You get better.
Look at these hands. Solid, they're solid. No chemicals on them.
What about Hillcrest? I know it's off the budget topic, but we painted sidelines, fog lines, and everyone's parking across them and into the street.
They always do.
I know, I mean, at some point we either enforce it or we don't.
I was on the commercial, and that's why we were going to.
After Monday night's decision and listening to the residents on Hillcrest and knowing full well that we have with the Main Street rebuild project coming up quickly, I sent all of the comments from the public discussion to Creighton Manning and asked them to go back and look at the traffic diversion plan, which basically is the same. It was tweaked a little bit differently. But the issue was that I asked them to please address it from what the residents' perspective was, and let's see what we can come up with there. Already, we know we're going to take the cars that are parked on Hillcrest and have to move them because they block partially the lane. That's not rocket science. We will probably have to increase our police surveillance up there because of the speeding complaint. The stop signs are fairly effective, though. They can slow cars down a little bit. But just not enough stop signs. Probably at the end of where Olympic Drive intersects with Hillcrest, we're probably going to put that back to a stop sign. If the traffic is increased. Traffic lights we're already under discussion for West Valley Road. I think that's going to have to be it, but maybe the push is going to be to make Hillcrest strictly local traffic. It's not supposed to be commercial traffic on it even now, and there's a sign there by the church that says so. But it's been ignored largely and in the wintertime, I get it. That's not so much of a problem. But in the summertime, if we're running two-way traffic on Hillcrest and parked cars have to be gone, and the commercial traffic needs to abide by the rules.
Ever since you did send that email, I did have a conversation with Peter about it. So there's two parts, and I've also received feedback from the community members. One, what's the feasibility of a sidewalk?
No possibility.
Just very expensive at this stage of the game.
I mean, only if it's a one-way and it's a painted sidewalk.
Yeah, we could do that. We could make it one lane, and then just put a white line down and one side is sidewalk. Sort of like Blueberry Hills was years ago, Scott, when Frank Sears got away with murder.
So,
Well, if you went one way, you could actually put in a row of parking there, couldn't you? A very small sidewalk? Or could you?
I think the neighborhood would probably go ballistic over that.
Well, it would eliminate part of the parking problem we're going to cause on Main Street. Because that's what the people are parking
But
on now.
I think long-term, we don't want cars parking up on Hillcrest.
can we just?
Right.
But the other side complaint that comes out of this is, well, if you push them out Hillcrest, they're going to park on Acorn and Greenwood. So you'd have to sign those neighborhoods.
And that leads me to my second part, where Oneida has a stop sign. So at least in the initial top part, Elm Street, Acorn, and Greenwood do not, or like Greenwood doesn't have until like later down. Is there a way that we can put a stop sign on Acorn and Elm Street at some point? Elm Street.
You got them at the intersections.
No, when you go down, like, you go down, that's one way, I guess, because, but it's speed down that way. And they do that with Acorn as well. I see them racing.
You know, speed is coming up in all discussions, so I think there's.
I think it's in conjunction if we do have more traffic coming through Hillcrest. They use that as a bypass.
Stop signs aren't intended to stop speeders. Stop signs are intended to direct traffic. So if we have a speeding problem, we need to have the police department go and write some tickets and enforce it, not throw up another sign.
And actually, you know,
Okay, what would be the more consistent sort of, you know,
I guess here's my point. When you go throw a sign up and you're saying we want to slow the cars down, it's not a legal stop sign. The reason to put the stop sign up is to direct traffic flow, not to stop cars. So in all legality, somebody could get out of the ticket anyway. It's not legal.
okay. So what you're suggesting is, or what you're saying is the only way to, when this, it's already happening now, but when the traffic flow increases over.
It's always been a problem up there. Anytime the police have gone up there and sat, ran traffic, then everybody slows down. The word gets out. I'm not saying they gotta write tickets, but if they stop some cars and give some warnings, it probably work too.
probably one of the other factors, it's a little bit different. It's neighborhoods, the neighbors that live up, the residents that live up there would probably slow down. But when you've got weekend warriors, every weekend they're different, they don't.
There's quite a short-term rentals, and then you combine that with an increased traffic flow on Hillcrest that use those side streets as bypass to West
No, I don't
Valley.
think it
You know, we could probably increase the speed limit, number of signs that we put up, might be something. But overall, you know, I've asked Creighton Manning to look at it from the residents' perspective as opposed to DOT's perspective, because there's two different standards.
Sure.
Maybe we can, and I, frankly, I think we want to address as much of the objections we can, keeping in mind that for us, it's going to be probably 2 months in the spring and 2 months in the fall, maybe. We don't know what is going to happen yet with the summer. But anyway, we are looking at that. West Valley, we always felt it would have to be, even now, we need a traffic light at that intersection because you got a quarter to a half mile of stacked up cars that can't get out.
Mhm. Especially during busy.
During busy, so the rest of the time it could be a blinking light.
Well, is it during busy season or during busy season with events? Doesn't look like we're
It's
going to
busy,
have any
it's
events.
busy season all the time. I had a sister-in-law that lived up there that used to complain all the time about it. It would take sometimes 20 minutes to get out on Cernak Avenue, and she lived at the foot of Oneida.
Because you constantly have to.
But there were times when the car stack up gets all the way back down to the foot of Nash Street, which
It's not enjoyable.
is, you know, it's begging for some improvements, so let's see what happens.
When you have.
Hey, bonus, we're gonna get 50% credit on our May bill from Guardian that will be applied to our August bill. How do you know?
You know, it's kind of interesting, some of the insurance companies are issuing
Credits.
credits to their customers.
You know, you see
I got it on my car insurance, $20. Didn't quite cover a month's premium, but they were. Okay, back, so overall, the, you know, sales tax we trimmed down a little bit because we believe that
Correctly.
it's going to be somewhat less. So normally we budget 137 in some years, and we've collected in the last 2 years between 138 and 151. So 137 would be normal, except for this year when we budgeted it down to 110. So perfect. And I don't know, community policing programs, that was really Marty St. Louis going out and twisting people's arms for the Halloween stuff we do with the young kids. And he was very good at raising money. I don't know that the same will be, so we cut that back from 10,000 to 2,500 or 7,500. Parking lots, we took the lots from 150 to 100. It's anybody's guess. We put any number you want there. Parking meter fees, we had budgeted 345. In the current budget, we've dropped it a little bit to 325.
Only because the 320, or 345 and the amount that we actually received year to date, we did not have full functioning meters for a good chunk of the year. So that being the case that we do have full functioning meters, I'm expecting revenue to increase.
Enforcement, do we have an additional person coming in? I know that's been a long,
Oh, that's
long,
Thank you for reminding me. Bill does have a candidate, and again, we're right up against an academy. So he's going to ask, he's hoping that we will consider that on the 29th of June.
So are you talking meter enforcement or you?
Yes.
He's not talking officer.
No, this is officer.
oh,
But he's talking.
He's
talking
not
about
meter.
No luck on meter so far, as I'm aware,
Friend Chuck's been paying out.
which means the officers are going to have to do meter enforcement. We don't have a choice.
so it's either that or the, I think the mayor and trustees need to volunteer this summer.
Hey, it might be a nice summer job.
Myself, Victoria, and Tracy all said we take a day.
There you go.
We'll all take a day.
All right, tickets all day long. That new machine's cool. It's fun.
Okay, on the second page of the revenues, page 2, under miscellaneous revenue, the unclassified revenue piece that's been removed, that was 450,000 coming out of the fire reserve. So that's out for the time being.
I still have 50 in them because they're gonna re-chassis that truck.
So we've got, I had a question on aid to municipality. Normally we receive that from the state. We haven't received it yet so far, the aid payment, but it's always the same and it didn't change for the upcoming year,
Yeah.
according to me.
It may be on OSU's website now. They've been backed up because nobody's in the office.
Was that going to be one of the topics of, one of the areas that are going to be cut? State budget? Is that aim going to be one of those areas that stays?
Well, that's one of the, the state,
We received so little, but.
the 32 is what we're going to get again. And that's, and Nikon has been trying to get that up, but the state has turned a deaf ear on it. It isn't going to happen this year for sure. So we put in the same number. Again, these revenue numbers,
I'm saying if we haven't received ours this year,
I think the state is just delayed, but I can check. It will come.
fingers crossed on that one. All right.
I think the governor's got some of the same problems that everybody does with the budget. It's, they're spending on this money going out on this virus issue.
Well, there's not a lot of sales tax.
However, the notch looks fantastic.
So really, the big difference here is that we bumped up the anticipated leverage on the fund balance to 575,000 as compared to 385 that we budgeted to take for this current year. We haven't taken that yet. Traditionally, what we do from an accounting standpoint is wait until the end of the year and see what we really need to close out the books. And Mindy and I were discussing that earlier today because there's monies that are still coming in that we haven't seen. Right now, if you look at the year-to-date budget, which shows about $1.6 million shortfall, that is two things. It is the $990,000 VAM that we took out of fund balance that is showing as debt payment in here without the corresponding revenue piece, right? And the other piece is the, what's my train of thought?
Part of it is
It's
transfer.
the fire department payment from the town of Ocala, which is roughly $625,000. So in effect, at the moment, we're in balance and we've got other monies to draw down on between now and the end of July that will be more than ample.
In town,
Ordinarily, they pay twice a year. They didn't pay this.
They do.
The
And
fire contract was in renegotiation, so until it's signed, she's gonna make one full payment.
But that's 8 years. That's for.
that's okay. And we're going to be handing her a bill for this current year just ending, and that'll be payable February February of 21 and in July of 21.
With the contract, it should have nothing to do with past due
Well,
balance. That's what this is.
Especially a year in arrears.
We bill a year in arrears
Yeah,
to
I
begin with,
understand that.
but then for whatever reason, and again, I mean, we started in November trying to get that contract renewed, change in the board, substantial change in members, so they put it off, and I spoke a couple of times in an hour to Jack Davro, and Jack at one point had told me, he said, well, leave it alone until February so the board can get seated. February is now May. Boom.
We could put that as a receivable one of these years. Of the year lag,
Yeah.
we don't put it as a receivable.
We'll have it before the end of our current budget year, so it'll reflect correctly.
Okay.
That's part of why you're seeing that big negative number at the bottom.
We also haven't collected the transfer from the electric department yet.
So there's enough there to cover the month that's left, month and a half.
Mhm.
I don't know that we'll have a huge return to the fund balance this year. I think for the first time, we're going to be closer to reality, but next year is anybody's crystal ball. We have not, I don't think we funded a contingency in here
We
this
haven't.
year. And Paul last year felt that he didn't need it. He created the budget a little bit differently. I have mixed emotions about not having someplace to go if we get into a bind, but on the other hand, that's one of the things that helps keeps this budget down.
I wonder if you knew about the coronavirus.
Considering the way he left his last job, I would say no.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be applying for anything in the future that has a forward accounting associated with it. That was his weakness. And probably was his weakness in semi-life, now that I think about it. So we still have funding in the budget for traffic control for two people. It's not,
What page you want?
I'm on page 27.
Can I just go back to page 18?
Yeah.
It says contractual services, it's pretty much flat for the past 3 years. What is that?
0.
Oh, the unallocated insurance?
Yeah, that's all, that number is all, that's always the number that's in there, and it's always right in the mid-30 range.
What is it?
It's
Can
like,
you explain that?
it's under every,
It's in every year's budget.
but it's not, I mean, it's like, it's in police, it's in fire, it's in everybody. There's a line item for every section.
Oh, contractual services, that would be any like photocopier contracts. If we have, Yeah.
That's not the fund we're looking at, we're looking at.
No, I was just explaining what-
Yeah.
I figured that's what came out. Like there's some that are, when you look at the year to date with only 1 month to go, there's a lot.
I've never been 100% sure what this number represents.
this 35,000,
It would be nice if you
There
knew.
may be, I've always assumed that that's insurance costs that apply across the village as opposed to by department. That's the way I've always.
well, this is the general funds side of it. So police pays a portion of it. It's our overall insurance cost. So everybody else has a line item for it in their individual portions of the budget. Whereas the regular general fund, so Justice Court doesn't have it. This encompasses, so water has it, sewer has it, electric has it. This is the general's portion of it,
What?
of our overall insurance premiums.
Oh, that's insurance.
Yes.
Contractual?
I would say it would be a portion that's our liability
Yeah.
insurance, which doesn't allocate to any department, some of it. In reality, you know, the insurance covers more than just the specific departments that operate.
Yes.
So, but that's the best explanation I've been able to come up with, and I've looked at that number for 11 years. And maybe
I wonder what.
try to make an assumption.
Usually both figures are on it.
Let's see how it is.
Other areas?
And just to piggyback on what Peter's talking about with contractual services under the police department, they were budgeted $42,000.
What page, right?
I think 20, I don't know, my page is cut off, so I don't know the number.
It's 26.
26
on the one that I
26 or
printed out.
27.
26 is the general fund.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
So they're budgeted 42, and year to date, they've only spent 26. So I'm getting back to the same thing as Peter. What are those contractual services?
These contractual services include things like their, what's the name? It starts with an L. Linstar, Lin Pro,
There's a format. That's their big computer one.
it's all of their regular software contracts.
I guess what I'm getting at is there's 1 month left and we've only spent $26,000. Does that mean that they're getting paid in July or?
No,
do we
it
over
looks like
budget?
the previous,
The previous was $27,000.
right, we have one expenditure that's been in the budget every single year that they haven't done yet. And I want to say it's the upgrade to the system in the cars. Starts with an L.
Windstar does
Linstar?
security, like.
Windstar,
Live scan.
Live scan, that is it.
Live scan.
I was gonna say, they do.
There's money in there for live scan.
That would be contractual. The equipment.
Yes, but we already have the equipment. This is the actual programming portion of it.
I just saw the discrepancy, so I'm wondering if we really need to do $42,000 for the following year. I
Let's
guess what I'm
question
getting at.
it.
Yeah.
Because if it isn't being spent, then we're just putting it in, all we're really doing, if we're not using it, is we're pushing up the cost of the taxpayer
Mhm.
and then putting it in the fund balance, which if it isn't used, if it's needed, we ought to get it done. I actually think something may be happening because I've heard lately that training in the department has perked up quite a bit, and I gather it's because of the return of one officer in particular that likes to do that sort of thing. He's part-time.
Well, and I would also like to notate, if you look down a few lines to material and supplies, you'll see they're over budget.
Yep.
A lot of the issues that I have run into, which I worked on all last night and a good chunk of today, is things are not being coded correctly, so they're being put into the system wrong.
Well, I would agree. We're paying somebody a lot of money to pay the bills. They should be able to pay them correctly.
Well, and she does, they get coded by the department. She just puts them in as they're coded by the department, so she doesn't know if it's a,
No, I'm saying from
oh,
the police department.
okay,
If they're over $7,000, they're obviously,
right.
they're just throwing everything at
But
the
I went into some of these accounts and some of the stuff that's being booked to materials and supplies should be booked to contractual, or it should be booked to IT and internet. They're being coded incorrectly because they don't know where to stick them, so they stick them in whatever one that they're comfortable with.
Mine has been there long enough, they should know where it goes.
One thing that you all should be looking at in the coming year is that with one system operating system is in place, the departments have the same abilities that you all will have, and that is to access their own budgets. And they're going to be able to look not only at what they're seeing today, which is what's been paid for, but they're going to be able to see what they've encumbered that isn't paid for yet. So that in theory, they should be able to say to Mindy, hey, this line, we're going to need to overspend this line. What can we do? That has not been happening at all. And with the upgraded operating system, I'm actually excited about the possibilities of, we're actually going to be able to look at that on a live basis and make
Well-
better judgments than we can now.
You will also as well, this will probably take about a month before, because I gotta get the girls and everybody else up and running. Utility billing won't go live until October. This is financial, so this is payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchase orders, all of that. Will go live July 1st. I have canned reports that will populate on your dashboards. So you'll all see the same dashboard that we see when we go into Encode. You won't have access to change anything, but you will have access to view the budget report, the expense and revenue report at any point in time. So you click on it and it'll automatically run it. That also being said, when purchase orders are sent to you for approval, you can drill into the account code that it's being booked to make sure there's actually money in the budget to pay for it. And it will tell you if there's other money out there that's already accounted for before you sign off on it. I found because the purchase order, here you go, 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 yep, we're gonna get it. And that's great. And then it comes back and I'm like, I can't take that out of there because we don't have any money in there. And a lot of that is the department head doesn't know that they've overspent that budget line. They too will have that same capability.
And can Tracy help, get it, make sure it's coded correctly?
Oh, absolutely.
These line items we're talking about?
Tracy and I have been going through the budget together, so she's getting more of an in-depth. And if, sometimes if something comes up and she's like, am I supposed to put this here? We'll look through the account codes together and figure out, okay, well, that doesn't actually fit there. It's here and we'll move it. There's only so many hours in a day though. So for us to sit down and go through every single item that comes in, I code all the electric myself, just because I know the code. But we're working on it. And she went through the same training as I did for the new Encode software. So she's up and ready to go. She's excited. She likes the new payroll functions.
Probably the best part of what you just said, we've got a little bit of backup in that area, which, and again, my sense is that if she sees something, she's been inclined to ask a question.
Yes, absolutely.
How many officers are we sending to the academy this year?
There's a provision for 2 in there. I think at this point, we may only have 1 to send. When we were developing this, the thought was that we had 2 retirements coming up that we were trying to get ahead of the curve on a little bit. Just one.
So do we need the $42,000 in there for academy expenses? We didn't even spend any this year, which I find hard to believe if we sent 3 guys to the academy.
Because we had a credit from last year. With all that money that came back.
We use that as a fund balance?
Mm-mm.
So I guess my question is, how much does it cost for them to do?
Well,
We paid ahead of time and then, no, the money came back from Clinton County. Oh, okay.
yeah, that goes back in as a credit against those costs. So that did happen, but at the moment, we look at it and we budgeted for 2.
It's $42,000 for 2?
Yeah, close to it.
It's $20,000 to send an officer to the academy?
Academy is like going to college. It's the last time I looked at direct academy costs, we were looking at 18. I don't know where the 42 is. It's probably representing.
Transportation.
There's a possibility, and we can have a discussion with Bill about that issue and whether there's going to be, I mean, right now is the time of year when we seem to be able to get candidates for employment for the police department 3 months from now. I mean, it's when kids are coming out of college that we're getting them, and we've had some decent, I understand that the candidate that's been interviewed that Bill hopes to have us act on before the end of the month is a female officer. That's a good thing for the department. So we can have a discussion with them if they don't see that they're going to use it. But remember, this budget goes all the way to,
You know, they only have academy at certain times, so if they're not at the academy, then they're not, so they're gonna end up going.
I can go back and pull the academy receipts to see
It's
what
just
we actually
18,000,
spent.
I don't remember. touching that much to go to the academy.
Long time.
Like, I've been out of it a while, so.
I'm more than happy to have
I
the.
don't remember, I sent a lot of people to the academy, I don't remember even sending them there to stay in a hotel.
That's why it's so high. In case we couldn't get them, thank you for saying that, in case we couldn't get them into Plattsburgh. For hotel stays, travel expense, and the actual academy cost.
Yes.
That was the reasoning I received when I questioned it.
I do know that I was told that they prefer to use Plattsburgh when they can, and the reason for it is that when we send an officer to Canton, we have to provide housing.
But I can look into it to make sure that we're,
The keys to the
if
car,
there's any wiggle room, I will.
which saves us money.
Well, you know, when you come down to that, Scott, I'd love your opinion, but everyone talks about police and how they're not trained properly. I don't know how you take somebody 3 months in an academy, 3 months on the job following somebody, you give them a gun, you put them in a dangerous situation, that's all he's got for training. Can you imagine if it's a school teacher, if I gave you 3 months of training and threw you in a classroom?
Well, you got supervisors watching all the time.
But still, you can't.
Oh, yeah,
be
well, I
there.
know. It's called private school.
I just, you know, if anything, not defund the police department, give them more money so you can train them.
I
Just can't get through it.
Well, there's differences.
Academy expense is different than training expense, if we want to stay on target. I have no problem with putting as much money in the budget for training as
But
possible.
I mean, right now,
I'm just questioning the academy expense.
I'm not talking about us, but I mean, in general, in the country, I mean, we're in the academies for these police officers and
You're sounding like a Democrat now. Pay
But
our
they're
cops
going to school more
pay our
now than they
teachers
ever
more.
did before. Because
Absolutely.
I've just always thought, you know, they just don't get that much training. I just can't imagine. You know, you watch on TV, the elite squads there to go through the incident shooting and make sure someone doesn't pull a gun, you don't kill them. And how often do our officers go through that? Do they go through it yearly?
So if we have wiggle room where I can move money out of academy expense, would you prefer me put it in travel and training since now we have an officer there that's really pushing it? Or pull it out completely?
I would like the chief of police to say, these are the trainings I got lined up and this is what it's gonna cost. That's how you do a budget. I mean, he's got $12,000 in there. I don't know what he's doing for the $12,000. So he's got some lined up, I don't know what.
And
I
historically.
mean, they do a lot of it in-house these days too. They don't do.
And historically, you can see that the number's been up and down, and, you know, there have been times that and admittedly, there have been times when maybe we've been a little bit too thin in terms of staff.
Yeah, they didn't have staff.
to provide.
Right, absolutely.
Right now, they currently have an officer that really is interested in using the recent training resources that we've got, and frankly, I believe that's good news. Speaking of that, and the issues of the protest rally several days ago in the village, for the most part, I think we were relieved that it did not result in any bad outcomes. However, I do want you to know that the individuals that organized it did not come back to the village with respect to anything dealing with, and the village had no knowledge until it happened that they were going to use Main Street to block it the way they did. I've seen some comments from the organizers that they thought it was good that people got held up for half an hour on the street. I take the other view of it, and that is, you know, you probably didn't do your cause much good. We would have very gratefully have provided for traffic diversion to let them conduct their march, even on the main street, but I felt that the bad part about it was that it looked like the village didn't know what was going on, and truthfully, we didn't. They had told Phil,
Consistent with.
I had told Phil Sunday night that they were going to march on the sidewalk, which is a vast difference from plugging up the street.
Yeah, I walked with them.
I know,
Yeah,
you said we were
it
going.
wasn't that,
I walked on the sidewalk.
But it wasn't that the event had any negative, bad things. I think people understood what it was there for. But, you know, from an organization planning, I mean, the people that were inconvenienced by it, we could have done something to avoid that.
Yeah, but
Had we known.
Yeah, I don't, just from all what I've witnessed, I don't think there's a lot of coordination with the police in order to like protest.
they're not going to ask the police when they think police are.
Well, I understand, and that thought went through my mind.
Yeah,
that They intentionally didn't because they didn't want the cops around. As it turned out, the advice that we received and conducted ourselves was we stayed out of sight.
And it seems that, it seemed to
I'm not
be
necessarily
something that
happy with
transpired without really incident other than, and I think that is a testament from my perspective, that's a testament to our police force and our community being inclusive, because it didn't turn into something else. It turned into just a demonstration, and the demonstration happened and then it was over, and then they showed there was a sign of solidarity and we moved on. And I feel like that is a positive for our community. In my
Yeah, well, hopefully, I would not want it to become a way of life that we jam up the main street every time somebody wants to do something.
I think this is
Especially we have a whole community to cover.
It's not like, you know, they're
Did
not.
most of them social distance or not?
No.
I'm sure they weren't smashing.
Nobody had masks on. Nobody
Protesting the-
Very few local.
Or nobody had
I
masks
saw
on?
them. But
Well, we're gonna know how many were local, because I understand that and unfortunately, this High Peaks Socialist Democratic organization that they use to organize this thing is actually a political organization. I understand that there is a petition coming to the village board for us to adopt the same resolution that we did in Center Lake, which, until we have it, but when that petition comes, we'll have a pretty good idea how much was really local and how much of it's just outside influence.
I mean, everybody's against police brutality, Craig. How hard is it to say we're against
And
police?
there's no argument with that.
No kidding, so.
let's,
When you say defund the police, that's a whole different.
But it depends on whether it's reflecting on our department. These people, by their own admission, said we don't have a problem here.
I think when you say defund, I think what they generally mean is demilitarize the police. And we don't really have our police force isn't militarized.
Police force.
Except for if we get another Tahoe, then I think we might. So I have a feeling that it was imagine, although from a sort of a business and just traffic flow, it was not the most ideal, but from a sort of a rally protest, I feel like this was the best case.
I will share with you the fact that we are meeting with a representative from the Adirondack Diversity Initiative, and we'll see where we go with that. I believe, I'm not a believer in passing resolutions for the sake of putting words on paper, but actions do tend to speak louder than words. And we may very well engage in some training programs on diversity just because we should.
Oh, also, I think the last meeting I brought up that there are certain sort of, and I asked Scott particularly, he wasn't quite aware at the time, but there's certain protocols that are in place. I think New York State might be mandating those, or
We're going to have to follow the governor's directives on that. That's an additional step, and
That's not till April.
we have until April to accomplish it. It doesn't mean we should wait until April.
Exactly. And I think that if,
Don't you think every police department has this on their books?
no, but it don't.
If the cops cover up for the cops, and that's what always happens. Historically,
We have
that's
the
the part that has
departments.
to change.
Departments have operating policy
Yeah.
manuals, and we have one here. I think it came up at the last board meeting, and there was a question as to what might be in there already. But, and frankly, I've had a couple discussions with the chief about the whole issue of diversity. And it's more than the police department here. This is a community that brings people from around the world for sporting events that are international. We bring people here for conferences. We have a diverse population that's visitors here. I think we're a little bit different than a community like Saranac Lake, where they have a little different population base than we do. And, I'd like to make sure that what we're doing continues to respect the activities that we're in and does it correctly.
Sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm confident we'll hear more on that. That's just beginning to develop.
Regarding, so I know that there is, what was the time limit again for short-term rentals?
July
July
31st.
July 31st.
But the application, they haven't, post complaints isn't online yet.
It's not like,
They're not,
Hoping by July 1.
and I don't know if it escaped the conversation, though, many of the short-term rentals that are going to apply for a permit, one of the stipulations is that they need a meter installed. Now, was that on the application? And then have we identified any sort of
it's
number of water meters? I understand, but like, have we, as they come in, or have we kind of identified those that are in the village that don't have meters and started
we
running?
haven't got the applications to identify from yet.
Okay. So I'm just putting a bug in everyone's ear. That's a huge part of what we need to do.
I think what he's asking, when they sign up, does it say I now have a water meter on the
They
application?
certify that they either have one, and if they don't, then they have to have one. So
That they're getting.
Yeah, just so we have them ahead of time.
Very much doubt that this is going to be an issue. What's that? Very much doubt. Most of these places had to get building permits so they could become a vacation rental.
Not
Yeah,
all.
like a lot of, sure, of course not all.
But I know about a lot of the conversations were the traditionally older homes that were in the residential neighborhoods in the village that they require meters. But now
they never had a meter.
we want to have those meters ready to install. So when it's,
Yeah, it's glad he's got a bunch of them. I don't think it's good.
We can print out lists as well that show every single water meter that's in the village.
because I feel like as soon as that permit hits and they start renting, because they're already renting now, but like they should be, a meter should be going in immediately.
As soon as we receive the application. Can we move on to fire?
I just have one more on the police, under equipment maintenance and repairs.
Mhm.
It's statistically been 86,000 and we're at 65. And we're budgeting 12. I'm just wondering if we shouldn't try to meet somewhere in between.
There's no more-
Seems like 12 is a little high.
What would you remember?
Same one, 26.
Oh, I think what we did was we took the two prior years, added them together and just averaged it out because we had that old Impala that we still have that's kind of on its last leg, so we kept a cushion just in case it booed out.
I'm being the devil's advocate, so I'm taking
No, no,
last year's and this year's, which is 86 and 65, so.
I hope when the.
You drop it down to 10?
that we don't have to repair it, so it's pretty-
I'm not saying it, I'm just bringing it up for discussion, I'm saying we have to do it.
The 12 is, as Mindy said, it was just an average.
Yeah, it was just an
High
average,
and low.
but you're right, the average over the last few years has been less.
Have better vehicles, you don't have as much maintenance expense.
All right, fire, sorry, Peter.
Capital outlay of the fifth line down, was that the roof?
That's the roof, the chassis on the one fire truck that they're looking to replace, which I budgeted 50,000 and I took 50,000 out of reserve for it. Probably not going to be that much, but I erred on the side of caution in case we ran into another issue. And replacement of the bay bathrooms, or remodeling of bay bathrooms.
It's,
So how much of that is roof? Because you said this year.
35,000.
it was 30, 35, 37, and the investment in that was $1,000.
All right, so you want to take the roof off for
I'm
this?
taking
Yeah.
the bathrooms and the roof out of this budget, and he's going to do them out of this year's budget.
So you're going to reduce this 88?
Yep.
I couldn't make any changes because it was made after the public hearing, so that's why it's.
Is Bill Moore's 15,000 still in here?
Yes.
The answer is, it is at the moment.
Can I ask where is it?
Yeah, where is it?
It's encompassed in the fire driver's payroll. Paul used the same account for everything. I don't have a separate account for that particular line item. So it's grouped in with the rest of the payroll.
Guess I'm gonna bring up the same request I always bring up.
What
What's that?
page
Away
are you-
with that.
what page are you on for that?
30. Oh, wait a minute, which dated?
You might have an older one.
29.
So it's the first page of the fire budget. One that says direct service personnel.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay.
What's that fire department had that shows us 1,000? Really know what that was. I see it's had sporadic use over the years, but not regular use.
And I think that used to be like didn't we pay a stipend for the department head? Like the head fire driver.
Mechanic, we used to pay.
Yeah, but that's now regular payroll.
So we may actually just be able to pull that
I
out.
think we zero that out. When the time comes. This one, not 230. Almost 30. No,
I guess I just asked the question. Every year I ask it, and it seems like they say by the end of the year, Billy always comes to stay where he is. And I still don't know exactly what he does for the $15,000 because he doesn't have a list of responsibilities. So
Again,
I'll
you're
make the same request.
you're a commissioner and you have every right to get that information, whatever it is.
My point being is, I guess us as the board didn't give him a list of,
A formal.
these are your duties that you're gonna do being the fire driver or head, whatever his title is.
I will say that I think the performance down there, and again, I happen to be a proponent in keeping him in the role that he's in. And I think generally there's support and good reason for that. But we do not have a point person in this community from a public safety perspective with everything that goes on that has a handle on that. And I've used Bill in that capacity, and he's worked well with the fire department. He covers all of the public safety issues. With all the events that are going on in this town, and a number of meetings and planning sessions that have to be planned, both from the perspective of emergency services and fire and police services. I think he's worth the investment.
So are we saying Justin isn't capable of doing
No,
what needs to be
in
covered?
fact, I was about to say that Justin's doing a good job. Justin doesn't fill all the roles that Bill is filling in this capacity. I was about to say that if there was room to give Justin an increase in compensation,
I'm for that, but I'd like to see him get 5,000 more a year.
I would support it. It's got to come from the commissioners.
I'm all for giving Justin a $5,000 bump. I think the problem he's got is that he doesn't get overtime and he ends up making less than a lot of his subordinates.
I have no problem with it, but
We actually looked into.
I think he should take over and run the fire
He
department the way it's always used to be run.
Make less than his subordinates.
No?
We pulled the W-2s
Okay.
to make sure. But I agree, he should get an increase in salary, but he does not make less than his subordinates.
Okay, I only had that from him, so.
Well, I also think that his ability down there to keep the department in balance in terms of the people, volunteers in particular, seems to be. I had a good discussion with the chief a week or two ago now, and what I was hearing from the chief, I'm very happy with it. I mean, I'm hearing that there's good communications between the head driver and the volunteers. That's important. I understand that in the discussion about the next acquisition of new fire equipment, that he has been involving the officers of the volunteer group. So I'm hearing things that they seem to be pleased about. I did not hear any negative comments.
And already you spoke to the town representative,
Yeah, I did.
what they say?
They were for it. They liked having Bill there. They thought it was a good investment, and they were also in favor of giving Justin a raise.
So my question would be, what's the what's the 5-year forecast for that particular? I know that, Mayor, you have philosophically, you have this public safety sort of
I think it's going to
umbrella.
be fairly important as we build up
Once
the university games. You know, beyond that, I don't know. A lot of it depends upon where this community wants to go in the future. But we're coming through, and again, the coronavirus kind of brought everything to a screaming halt. But all of that activity gets back on board because we've got a date on the calendar that, you know, we're trying to get the community prepared for 2023. With major housing developments on the drawing boards, that if they don't get knocked out, are going to address one of the big issues, but it raises other issues. You know, we're looking at the ability of our utilities to support that development. We're looking at, and again, that developer is trying to make it he's trying to make the project as sustainable and energy efficient as possible. I think Kimball and I had a discussion with Mindy and MEUA about the possibility of using IEEP money to create a project where there won't be any leverage on our electricity or minimal from a heating perspective, looking at some kind of ground heat project for up there, all of which makes those more attractive as rentals or as long-term ownership. But we have to look at this from the perspective of how do we participate and to what extent. I can look at the discussion favorably because a few years ago, remember when we first got going with IEP, one of the first things we did was replace all the refrigerators in Greenwood. Why? Because it leveraged our power less. If we build 450 new housing units, regardless of the ownership or rentals, we're going to put more. We're going to leverage our hydro allocation way heavier than what we do now. It would be probably like having maybe 3 hotels built, new hotels put on the system, and they're all leveraging it. To the extent that we can reduce that leverage on hydropower, we think we provide a benefit to every rate user in the electric system. So that's a discussion that only got underway, I would say last week. I remember when I talked. But MEUA is looking at that and trying to figure out with NYSERDA, with NYPA, it's a well-rounded group that is looking at it. We're looking at that as one of our energy efficiency initiatives.
Just to circle back, so your plan for is your hope for the public safety individual is that for the remainder of your mayor, and you're making recommendations to the incoming mayor to maintain that position until at least after the university games. Is that what you're? That's what I'm hearing.
That would be, in my mind, that would make some sense given the planning issues that are ahead of us. But you know, I can't say that a different mayor is going to do something different. I may find a better way to do it.
And if you're looking 5 years down the road, what's the ambulance going to do? Is that all of a sudden going to become a village function? Would that not? I mean, that's a possibility.
You know, that's always out there.
I mean, we don't want it to
It
be,
becomes more complex and volunteers are less willing to serve in that capacity, then you're relying more and more on paid staff. I mean, think about what would happen if all of a sudden we had to pay our firemen. That's why, and I have this argument with Paul, because we pay the volunteers, firefighters, some money every year. And he came to me and said, well, they should be using that to buy their own equipment. And I said, well, wait a minute. We've got 35 to 40 individuals that are volunteer firefighters. They're unpaid. They answer the calls at any time of the day or night. And I defy anybody. You couldn't replace 2 firefighters for what we contribute to the volunteer organization. To me, it has worked very, very well for Lake Placid. And frankly, I had to put my foot down and tell him he was going to stop pushing the idea.
Well, I just kind of circling back, with such a substantial event coming in without a formalized sort of, I wouldn't say job description per se, but formalized job responsibilities, then it's hard to gauge the ability.
If we had a paid planner on the payroll, we'd have a different discussion. But we don't, and some
No, I mean,
communities.
public safety as far as, I feel like we're doing that ad hoc. So I just, and I know we've had this position for several years now, but if your approach is to be sort of, I want to say legitimized, but like legislated, it needs to have a more.
It's an umbrella over all of our public safety services. We do the same thing in public works, and there it's Brad who's carrying them all. We don't have a separate public works officer for the village, and this seems to be the best way to coordinate the activities of all of those. And he's been generally well respected for the contributions that he has made and the work he has made to it. During the buildup of this outdoor dining project on Main Street, he was the point person for the village with that. He worked directly with Greg. He worked with Roost. So it makes some sense. He's been actively engaged in getting the signage out in the community, and that, and frankly, we need more of it. We're talking about that. I mean, Roost is the producer of it. I think we just put up 3 major new signs at our entrances, try to remind people about face masks and social distancing. And we're getting calls in the office from people that are unhappy because they're seeing people not wearing masks. There is no law that requires you to wear a mask.
Unless there's,
Except
you're on
for
social distance.
social distancing being the issue. So,
If you're walking on the sidewalk.
yeah, well, the argument is if you're walking towards somebody on the sidewalk, there's no way that you're socially distant. So you should have your mask on.
But the key word there is should. There's no law saying
There's no
you can't.
law. The governor did, under his executive orders, did give the proprietors the opportunity to refuse someone entrance to a shop or a restaurant. Also requires that all food service people will wear masks, and that can be enforced. Also allows the proprietor to tell somebody they can't come in and shop without one on. But that's not the same as the law that says you've got to wear a mask whenever you're out in public.
I went to the eye doctor this morning with an interesting experience. You know, if you've been to the eye care for the Adirondack, you can't go in the other half where Barbara sits and does the eyeglasses unless you're asked in, kind of like here in the upper floors. Everyone wears a mask. I noticed the one girl that came in next to me had it down so she didn't fog her glasses. They made her put it right up again. Otherwise, she'd have to leave too.
We have tried. Our employees, especially the outside employees in the departments, are required to wear masks when they can't socially distance. And whenever we see 2 individuals in a vehicle together, clearly they're not distanced, so they're supposed to have a mask on. I actually had an experience where one of our employees got out of his vehicle and walked into a local store with nothing, no mask, nothing on. I immediately called the department head and said, I want you to remind your department that this is not an optional request. The second time it happened was a different department. One was in the, I believe, the water department. The second one was in the police department. And I received a complaint. I issued a memorandum to all departments indicating the circumstances under which we're not requiring gradsmen, if they're out doing a blacktop job, when it's 90 degrees, to wear a mask. I understand that. But under normal circumstances, if they're going to approach a member of the public, they better have a mask on.
There's 2 cases that you had, were they blatantly trying to disobey or were they just forgot? So I walked into my office.
I think one of them is kind of type of personality that probably doesn't put a lot of stock in it, doesn't care. Although that's not fair to say really, but the other one is a trained officer. And the department provided all the resources, gloves, masks, and it was involved in a pullover for speeding. But, you know, it's the public that's registering the complaints, and then we're just simply responding. But we have not insisted that But when the guys are out in the water dish, up to their knees in muck, that they have a mask on, we understand that. But if they're approaching the public, or they're driving around in a vehicle and somebody says they're not wearing masks, we don't have any defense.
The law that says you can gather 25 people come into that.
You know, I haven't really gotten any good and seen any good information yet on, haven't we clearly all understood it? 25, I've heard the governor has authorized it. I haven't seen any, I haven't seen any of the conditions that go with that. So that would be the question, what's required?
I mean, let's just take an example of Jason. If he wanted to have 20 people from his street in per party, legally you can do that, correct?
I believe that's,
25
I
people.
I believe that's true. I don't understand the
I'm not that social when it comes to it.
related
But I
requirements.
mean, you could if you wanted to, legally.
Yeah, but churches have been allowed to have up to 25 members.
That's going up to 50, right? 25% of the place, right?
Uh,
Now it's going up to 50% on Friday if that goes through.
Depending on the.
But if you want to have a protest at your house, in which people bring their own beer, you can have 100.
And you can,
Well, the 99% is the rest of us. We're gonna get together and we'll march by Peter's house.
but, you know, I think everybody
You're
is trying,
hosting.
Hopefully you'll cheer us.
is trying to understand the requirements, and let's face it, they've been coming out every single week, there's something new.
Yeah.
But, and it's understandable that people aren't going to get it right initially, but the state does have an enforcement arm and penalties, including ones for face masks under some conditions at least. And, you know, and our local law enforcement may get a call from the county chair indicating the complaint, and we have to go out and prosecute it or investigate it. We probably had one or two. I know we've had, for right now, for example, you can't rent motorboats that are powered. And I happen to have heard that our motorboat operator on Lake Placid, who rents boats, have been doing it, and I gather that there's been a couple of visits there.
And that's actually a place that it can save.
Who showed him in? Steve Wilson. Shocking.
Probably.
We're involved, certainly.
But, you know, this is the kind of stuff, and you know, we're trying to manage, it's just like the face mask thing. If we see a group not with masks, it's obviously not a family. You know, we've got these cards that we hand out to them, we have a friendly reminder. We're not issuing citations for that unless there's a real issue. But, yeah, there could be a lot of it because a lot of people misunderstand it. We've got one individual who asked me to put arrows on the sidewalk and Main Street goes one way on one side and another way on the other side. We're not doing that.
Good. Good for you.
But I couldn't really argue with him because our sidewalks are just 6 feet wide for the most part. And from a social distance standpoint, when you have one person on the curb and one on the inside, are you 6 feet apart? The answer is no. But Dr. Faust, in his commentaries, used to say that if you're 3 feet apart, you're generally protected. 6 feet is.
And you're passing, you're not stopping and talking to the person for 5
You
minutes.
just do what you did when you were a little kid and you went by the cemetery, you hold your breath.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything else going forward on the budget here before we run out of time?
One thing on the, you mentioned in front of Steve Will, or we mentioned Steve Wilson, I don't know if you guys knew if the center line of the road is shifting 18 inches towards, from Mirror Lake to Lake Placid, you know, that stretch where Holiday Harbor used to be.
Mhm.
And I asked why, and if you look, the sidewalk does this, and now the sidewalk's going to be perfectly straight. And all the people that were upset about Steve Wilson putting his stuff out there, and hope there won't be any shoulder for him to put his stuff on now, so he'll be on his own property.
Good point.
But I learned that when I was up there the other day.
I have to say the sidewalk looks really nice.
That's the first time,
You've
that's
seen
the
that
first time
sidewalk?
I looked at that sidewalk and
So
realized
nice.
that it has it's different.
And the sidewalk they put in is nice.
Well, and
It's
the
just
curbing
flat.
is very nice as well. I know Brad had said in certain areas, they're gonna have to, when they pave, they'll have to pave up to
go drive and he has to take his portion.
Yep.
Not the, that has to be a drive, test every one of them before.
Okay, go at 30 miles an hour, just to be safe.
See if you.
There's a couple of them I wouldn't do that yet.
That's the rule, I told him.
But it is really nice. They look great.
They're making
I like
good
that
progress.
curving.
They're very expensive, so I hope so.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, they look like cement, don't they? They're kind of whitish.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think it's a nice offset though, because the concrete's lighter.
Yeah, it's nice. Color coded.
Mm-hmm. Makes it look all lighter.
It's the absence of color, Art. We didn't put any in, remember?
Something I've wondered for a while, because it's not a big,
Well, it's
it's IEP revenue at the electric department.
It all- it's all-
Where's the list of
It's all over.
IEP revenue?
Yeah, the revenue for the IEP.
All right, where are you now?
There's no revenue. It's mostly a pass through.
So it's
So,
because it's within every, it's kilowatt.
right. It's encompassed
So it's an
inside
expense,
the,
but it's not a revenue.
right. It's housed within inside the actual rate. Or not the rate, but the bill
So
that
it's not
comes in.
broke out.
Yes.
Also on water, we budgeted to take $40,000 into the general fund from that account, but I'm inclined to feel this year that if we don't need it, I'm not going to take it.
Yeah.
Because
So
we've got,
don't we have to have a sewer rate change? I mean, we keep losing money and there's fund balance and nothing there.
we looked at those and we-
Sewer's actually gonna go up. There's additional monies that you see a lot of expenditure, which is drawing down what we have in revenues substantially. However, the money that we're gonna receive from EFC on those different projects that we did will get put back into it, and a large chunk of it, if you go sewer in general. 1 second. Yeah, if you look at. Got too many versions of this.
Yeah, the page number too.
Well, this is a different report.
Okay.
If you go to the sewer fund, it underneath G3, it says sanitary sewers, and then it's departmental expenditures. You'll notice the code is G38120, so that might make it a little easier to find. But it's engineering for Main Street. It's $366,000. It's drawing down revenues. You'll see there's nothing budgeted for it. That's all Kathy Swazo for the Main Street project and for the water sewer project. So that money will get reimbursed to us from EFC when we do a reimbursement.
ultimately, there's
Yes, from a cash flow point of view. Same with the water. A portion of Kathy's expenditures are in water too, which inflates. This year in the budget, Brad did actually put some budgetary numbers in there for it so that we can see where we are budget-wise. But like I said, a big chunk of that, the other one is in water and it's under contractual services. We budgeted $4,100 and we're at $74,000 right now.
Which is page 6 of your water fund.
Yes. Which is also Kathy Swallow. So,
those costs eventually are going to get capitalized.
well, those costs,
If we do the project.
once we get the new accounting software, we will have project accounting, which we were trained on and is super easy to use. And we'll create project numbers for all of that. So we'll actually be able to physically pull the project and see where all of those expenditures hit. So they're not going to hit the individual line item, they're going to hit the project. So when the revenues, or not revenues, but when the money comes in from the grants and from the short term, it'll wash and you won't see those big overages like we have right now.
I think you're really going to like the project accounting software.
Oh, it's so much.
It
I
is-
mean,
it-
but
it's
it's so much fun.
It's so informative. It will tell you what the grants are that we anticipate, how much we've drawn and received on them. You'll be able to look at each project and know exactly what that project, where it stands.
It doesn't seem
Awesome.
Something we haven't had forever and, you know,
ever.
as we're doing more project type work, you it would have been nice over the years to have had that.
In this same project, like with the light items, you can put in the descriptor of like what it is that it is for.
Correct.
So then you could even then have, like, pull that up and see that it's expended this much, then you can actually say, hey, do you need this in the future, or what is your plan for this?
The coolest thing about this particular software, because Tracy and I went through 2 weeks of training, 32 hours per week. And it was straight from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. I did a lot of it at home, but we did intensive training and we had examples. Tracy had to run a mock payroll. We had to run a mock accounts payable. I had to do accounts receivable, journal entries, the whole 9 yards. But when we put bills in, I'll give you the electric department, for example, and we buy cutouts, arresters, whatever, from 5 different companies, but we can't remember which company we bought, the specific one that we have right now that we really, really like. What was the last company we bought it from? Well, right now, I have to go into every single company that we purchase stuff from and look through every single bill to see if I can find it. Now, I can pull accounts payable up, and there's a search bar on the top, and I can type in arresters, and it will bring up every invoice that has an arrestor in it. I can type in cutouts, and it will bring up everyone. I don't have to search by invoice number, I don't have to search by date, I don't have to search by company number. I can search by what was actually put in the descriptor, which is a huge benefit for us, because there are a lot of times, oh, well, we bought this 2 years ago from this company, and this year we bought it from this company. Oh, but we really liked it from the first company we bought it from. Can we go back to that one? But nobody remembers who it was from. So it gives us more flexibility. Everything in there is in a grid format, so we can search by anything. Makes it a lot more user friendly, not only for us, but for the girls downstairs, because they don't run any reports because they don't know which ones they're supposed to have and which ones they're not. So I can create reports specific to what they're going to need based on the criteria they give me, and then save that particular report format, and they can just pull it whenever they need. They put the dates in they want, and they can just pull it. The same with any board member, anybody who has access to it themselves. It makes it a lot easier.
Fantastic.
Mindy, on the wages, we've got 4 of our, and the police mediation is finished. We haven't seen the final, and I don't know if the PBA has voted yet. But
Oh, I thought Brian sent me the final with the rep, or with the raise.
I haven't found anything about it board yet.
Oh, he sent it. So maybe the next board meeting, I can forward you that email. It could be. Let me see if I can find it.
No, this is just the memorandum of agreement, but this had not yet been voted on by the department, so it was subject to vote. And remember, I brought it to the board for your knowledge, so you would know when the time came. I haven't heard that they voted yet.
Okay, so he sent me the final version, but you're right.
So
That will be
we're
voted
still-
on.
But we have 4 other labor agreements that are expiring at the end of July, so. And I guess the reason I brought it up was, did we factor in any kind of,
We did 2% across the board. We figured we'd be safer than so if we need to reduce it or increase it, we can based upon contracts, but it's generally first year's 2%, and then we generally go 1 after that as past practice. So,
so we have something to
yes,
start with?
yes. And I did factor in the police department's. I went back into it.
We did use the MOU.
Yeah. So
Okay,
it should be okay.
anything else?
35?
Where are we?
General fund?
Yep.
Yeah.
Page 35, snow removal.
Yeah.
We had $145,000 for materials and supplies, and we've spent 54. And vehicle maintenance was 61, and we spent 25. Category overall, we budgeted 220. We've only spent 94, and in the past, we've done 192 and 159.
I don't have page 35.
I'm assuming it's 35, I counted the numbers.
No, it's 35. What's the date up here on the left-hand corner?
623.
Here's the older one, it's account number 5142.
Okay, yeah, equipment, I guess.
As far as materials and supplies, Brad pads that budget for salt and sand. This year, we were substantially under what we would normally budget or what we would normally purchase. We do have a contract with them that we have to purchase X number of amounts per year. And then if we purchase more than that, then we can. But I know he pads it for that. I can make a modification and decrease it. But I wouldn't decrease it too much just in case we have a really bad winter and we need a lot of sand.
No, I get that. I'm just going by the truth.
And then.
For all those categories together, we went 159, 192.
Mhm.
We budgeted 220. And we only did 94. I'm just wondering if the 210 is a little too high.
Okay. And then
Based
he
on
did
our
reduce
last
vehicle
one.
maintenance and repair from 61 to 50.
Big money left over there.
Well, and here's the thing with this in particular, because we buy plow trucks a lot. One thing that was never done in previous years that I would like to start doing, and Paul did establish them while he was here, but if we have excess money left over in the budget right now, it just goes to fund balance. I'd like to appropriate a portion of that, so say it's materials and supplies, and we have an excess left over, into the highway reserve fund. So if we need to buy a truck going forward, we can buy it out of that instead of purchasing it out of the actual budget.
Similar to the fire department.
Yes. I mean, we have reserves set up for all of them that have small amounts of money in them. But technically speaking, if we've set it aside for that particular budget and we have some excess that we can put there.
But it has to be used for that particular.
Exactly. But
So
we're,
maybe that's what was prompted by the comptroller. We needed to ensure
Yes.
that our appropriate.
but we're always gonna need a plow truck or a dump truck of some sort that can be used as a plow truck. And it could sit there for a couple of years until we need a new plow truck, but I'd rather have reserves set aside so we don't have to hit the taxpayer again and again and again because we're
We'll
just
talk
throwing
about
money.
that endlessly, but we never did anything.
I would like to going forward. I am all about change, Peter. I want to do it the right way.
So moving forward, setting up reserve funds so that we
Allocated
self-fund
fund
instead
balance
of borrow
instead
short term, and that's just one more step in that progression, which is probably a good thing.
Plus politically, if we have a big fund balance, we can argue because it's reserved for this and this and this and this. It's easier to.
Yep. And
Or we can say.
I'm not
we're
against
planning-
reducing that.
No, I just.
No,
And
That's the
then-
same thing, you know.
Absolutely. But I would like to take a chunk of it if we are over budget and put it to that better use than.
keep that in mind for the end of the year, because this year undoubtedly will happen, because I didn't sign off on very much salt this year. For whatever reason, every time I sign a salt purchase order, it sticks in my mind.
Well, and I think it's also
That's why the
important
lake turned over, Craig.
Yeah, I know.
to take into account,
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily just that.
Well, that was the early cold weather, wasn't with the ice.
while we have a budget for $145,000, if we don't have the revenue to substantiate the 145, we don't spend it. Or we can't spend it. So all of the excess money that may be sitting here or that we see on the page, the general fund in and of itself comes down to the bottom line and how much excess money we have at the end of the year. Which may only be, considering we paid off some excess items and what we end up taking out of fund balance in the end may only be a couple $100,000. So it's not necessarily that snow removal in and of itself has an extra $400,000 or an extra, $150,000. It all comes down to the revenues, because the revenues is what funds this, and if our revenues are low, we don't have the excess funds.
But then you know what particular line items to adjust based on
Correct.
the drawdown.
Mhm.
So I think this discussion was almost maybe, it was me, and I've been at it like that. Teaching a whole week. I don't know if we've really nailed down any particular numbers or items, or at least as the mayor and Mindy going back with the items discussed.
I
to
have,
come
I
back a
have
different person.
notifications.
Okay, maybe that's just me then, because there's a lot going on. So then,
Police car, you guys gonna get back to talk to Billy?
We're gonna have a discussion about the police car. We're gonna look at the fire department's capital outlay and change that because we're gonna do 2 of those items this year. I'm gonna check on academy expense to make sure that we're not over budgeting for that. As well as reducing whatever that line item is. Maintenance in the police department, down to $10,000.
and then, but I guess my ultimate point is to get back to Peter's original, how much additional fund balance we need to use in order to be able to, I know philosophically, you kind of want to be able to bring it down as much as you can without really going a little extra because you just, I hate to say that, never get it back because there are infrastructure needs moving forward.
You know, we don't want to be in the county's position of having to put tax burden on the taxpayer because we let it down too low.
But if
So-
between the combination of sort of reduction, line item reductions and what Peter was mentioning.
So from Peter's perspective, if I use last year's estimated tax rate on this year's total taxable amount, will still increase our revenues for real estate taxes by $53,000.
My point is revenue neutral.
But that is revenue neutral. That's leaving it at the exact same tax rate as it was last year.
It's tax rate neutral, not revenue neutral. Big difference.
Well-
So you want to
The assessed
reduce the
value
tax
went-
rate?
The assessed value. went.
Yes.
So come
All
on
we
to the
care about
2%.
what comes out of the pocket, except for, you know, who crap gives a about tax rate, except for politicians who go like this and say, I kept the tax
Well,
rate.
you're assuming that everyone's tax rate went up though. I mean, you've got the NSA building that's now
Yeah.
a taxable entity that wasn't
Mhm.
before.
I
Things
was
like
gonna
that
ask,
have to
did
be
it go on?
What's that?
Did it go on?
That's usually, but I'm saying things like that go on as well.
For you.
I have one more question.
Mhm.
What's the maybe, page 37 for sidewalk. Materials and supplies, contractual services. $82,000,
Oh,
and it's only 5,000, and the years prior were 10 to 21. I don't know what the big jump was for this year, but obviously it hasn't happened.
oh, that's, no, wait a minute. That's not.
And so I guess I don't know what the 75 is for this year.
Well, again,
And the third-
if you look at the notes on that one, it does indicate, and I know he was talking about Greenwood Street and Saranac Avenue. I'm not sure exactly what the projects are.
Okay.
Peter, any
I
idea?
guess I'm confused, isn't the capital overlay the one up above?
Yes. I can send you a breakdown of what's in that.
Okay.
And then we can look at it thereafter. I know he did bring it down.
Just wondering, especially the contractual services, how did we go from 6,000 to 30,000 under sidewalks? I don't know what. I don't know, like I question.
The contractual services is the engineering that Ivan did for the sidewalks,
For which sidewalks?
Main Street.
Oh,
And I think that's what the additional in materials and supplies is, because we're gonna have to pay for the curbing, and it's not gonna cover the granite. It includes something else on Main Street though. So that'll actually get refunded by the Main Street grants. That'll come out of the Main Street grants. I will double check.
so we tax the people, get it, and then we get reimbursed for it?
Similar to what you was talking about before with the sewer, that's just got reimbursed. So from a cash flow perspective, we're okay with never losing money on sewer.
No, that means we'll be net positive when it comes to, for funds.
Yeah.
Tax it and then.
Let me look at it. I'll send you the
It's like
description.
opposed to
Just make a
paying out
good
of fund
point,
balance,
I'll
it's
double
the
check.
city.
Scott's right. We have to pay for them tax shelters here. Expense in there, we don't even have it.
We're not doing Main Street? The worst of it. Oh, it's a separate town portion of the sidewalk.
We put bitches all the time. It's old.
Well, people already love the country. It's like,
Fine.
it's
All the work I'm gonna get,
$100,000
all
cheaper.
for nothing.
Well, what a great place to have a sidewalk put in, it's gonna use 50% less salt around Mirror Lake. I mean, if you've ever had a spot, it's a no-brainer where it is, it's great.
Well, that's part of
I think
my
it's
style, for sure. Yeah. It's, I would say it's an aesthetic, substantial aesthetic change that needs to be explained.
And I really hope we get the sample from Permacon of the bricks that we didn't use up there in case Main Street goes from granite to bricks. Because it surely would be nice to see those, have them, so you can walk on them, look at them, see what they look like before we commit. But I got a feeling granite's probably not going to happen on Main Street.
What do you think of?
You think we're going to go anywhere better with COVID-19 here? People have any more money?
Because it's 0% interest.
Materials.
You gotta love that number.
Aren't there's no like a wealthy
Part of it is
donor
not
class?
quite.
Can't you get a hold of
Part
some
of
of your friends and then we can kind
For all
of describe the names periodically?
I know that much.
Which you don't know.
If you look at the business we're doing now, you are a wealthy donor, so that's guaranteed income. I might
That was a
qualify.
question from like
Oh,
2 years
yeah.
prior, all of a
Yeah,
sudden
yeah,
it's a huge jump.
I might qualify for Medicaid this year.
It looks like the sidewalk.
I got no income coming in.
Back then.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that
It's
it's
very much in here today.
It is effective,
Either.
it has impacted all walks of life, for sure.
I will
That's
pull the
why,
breakdown and I will
that's
send it to you.
What income that you had last year, you're not going to get this year?
what's that?
What income did you have last year that you're not getting this year?
Oh, we get the same income.
That's what I
Only,
mean.
only 3 times the amount of work.
Trump gave you $2,400.
What's that?
Trump gave you $2,400.
Trump did.
Trump did. He signed
The
it.
oh yeah, he signed it. Just because he put a scribble on it doesn't mean he paid for it.
But then he followed it up with a letter to the IRS.
Was that? No, I didn't. But I am recording all his tweets now.
Did you get a check or did you get a credit card?
Neither, I got a
I got a direct
direct
deposit.
deposit.
Oh, okay.
I just put it
That
in
makes
my
sense.
savings.
Yeah.
I got to check. I like the ends.
Well, but they, like, we got just a debit card.
Really?
You're
too rich
to get it.
$200.
Something. It's my money. I want some of my money back. I knew it. It brought me a little bit of joy knowing I was spent a lot of it.
Well, and that was also like.
My savings got my, honey, don't remember to thank your.
And putting cash in your account would be like,
Maybe,
No.
maybe his wife.
Having a couple $300 a month for the next year would help too.
Pretty much I can make that enjoyment.
Anything more, guys, on the budget, or are we ready to surrender on it?
Scott, give us
Raise
motion
up
to
the red
adjourn.
flag.
I will send you all the info.
Actually,
though.
it's a work session, so we don't have to do that.
Yeah, but just give them,
Cindy, this guy, like you said earlier, there's got to be a way to capital outlays for engineering.
good job.
There is.
Today, it should be not in the.
Yes, there is. And once we get that project accounting module up and running, it will be in there versus in the actual budget itself. Because we can load the budget for the project, which we have to have, into the project accounting software. And every single time we make a payment, the payment's gonna show up because it has to show up on the general ledger for you guys to see it when you sign off on it and warrant. But it's also gonna show up in that project accounting module, so we can see where it's hit, make sure it hit the right spot, and we can pre-code them, so we don't have to worry about it going in the right spot. Because that's one of the biggest issues that we've had thus far, is Paul said to put it in this code, Peggy said to put it in this code, I said to put it in this code, and Tracy's like, I'll put it wherever you want me to, just tell me. And the projects have changed in different ways, so Paul didn't like Peggy's coding. I do like some of Peggy's coding. So it's a crapshoot at this point.
National standard for you guys, so you can't keep having your own personal touches.
Well.
Well, and I go
Every
by,
time we
I
get
go
a
by-
message, it's all up.
oh, I know.
I've consolidated this 75 codes into this one. I
No,
created
they
44,
will be by OSC code going forward.
But I trust you.
But Peggy liked to add extenders on everything because it made it easier visually for her to see. Paul didn't like the extenders. Auditors hate the extenders. They want everything lumped into one spot. So every time I have an audit done, they're like, why do you have 18 of these codes? Well, because this one's for this, and this one's for this, and this one's for this. And if you think it's bad in the general fund, look at the electric fund, because there's 9,000 codes in the electric fund, because everything is broken out. And they take all of it, and smash it together, and stick it in one code.
Craig, do we stop this or we need it here?
So,
American Farm General.
I am working to fix it.
Where did you get it?
I was like, I'm gonna text him, like, I hate to